America's Heartland is made possible by
They make up a small part of our population, but have a huge impact on our lives. They take business risks few others would tolerate, all on our behalf. They're American farmers who feed, fuel, and clothe the world. Monsanto would like to recognize them for all they do for the rest of us. Because ultimately, our success and everyone else's depends on theirs.
and by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Sarah Gardner. Seafood has taken on a much higher profile with consumers these days, both for taste and for nutrition. We'll take you to a one-of-a-kind research facility where the focus is on fish, and it's 375 miles from the ocean.
Hi, I'm Jason Shoultz. Boarded-up storefronts are a common sight in small towns across the Heartland, but coming up, I'll take you to southeastern Colorado, where townspeople save the grocery store to buy some hope.
Hi, I'm Yolanda Vazquez. Did you ever wish you had a horse when you were a youngster? Well, we'll take you to a special farm where the equine dream for one Tennessee couple has resulted in some big, big Clydesdales. It's all coming up on America's Heartland.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's Heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand. In America's Heartland, living close to the land.
The tiny town of Walsh, Colorado is like many small communities all across the United States. They've seen folks leave town by the hundreds. They've seen businesses on Main Street close their doors. But when the small town grocery store shut down, they realized something. It was not just about groceries, it was about their identity. For miles, nothing but rolling fields of grain. Southeast Colorado farmer Jamie Hume admits, when they say, are you out in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, you kind of are, right?
We're out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, not the end of the earth, but close.
The closest town is 18 miles away by gravel road.
You guys find everything?
Yep, we have spark plugs too.
Okay, spark plugs, all right.
In Walsh, Colorado, he can get his auto parts from Rick Mills. Errol Cook's crew can fix his truck at the repair shop.
And I just had the one bolt left holding onto it, which was left afloat. So,
and walking down Main Street of this town of just over 600 people, he could easily bump into the mayor and his dad on their way to the grocery store. But what if something as routine yet important as a visit to the grocery store was not possible? It's something that Jamie Hume and everyone else in this small town don't have to imagine. In 2006, their little grocery store closed down due to economic reasons. The closest grocery store was another 20 miles away, and for Jamie Hume, that meant an hour-and-a-half round trip just to get groceries. An inconvenience initially for Jamie's growing family.
Here, you'll like this. Here you go.
But within months, something would happen that would turn an inconvenience into a desperate situation. A winter storm that changed everything. Stranded and snowbound, residents quickly realized that their isolation put them in a dangerous position.
We have an aging population here, and these people, a lot of them can't travel and don't have the means to travel.
Walk through Walsh's business district with Mayor Clarence Jones, past the abandoned storefronts, the broken glass, and boarded-up buildings. What did this used to be here? Another empty
furniture store.
Furniture store?
Kid, huh?
And you see why people started asking, are we losing more than a grocery store? Are we losing our town? Just tough for small businesses to make a go of it in this town.
Agriculture suffered quite a bit through the 80s and 90s. The farms grew larger, required less help, more mechanized, so small towns felt the impact of that. We dropped in population from about 1,100 to about 650 in about a 15-year span.
Wow. But rather than sit back and watch the town wither on the vine, the residents took action.
And that's when we come up with the idea of selling stock.
And within about 45 days, we had raised $150,000 to purchase the property.
In a town of 640 people, we have around 300 stockholders.
I've got 5 kids, and I put $500 a piece in for each one of them.
We just basically said we're going to put up an effort. If we're going to go down, we're at least going to go down fighting.
With help from the local bank and a no-interest loan from the USDA, a few months later, the store reopened. And today, the Walsh Community Grocery Store is going strong, generating tax revenue for things like road repair. While customers bring their weekly shopping lists, in the back storage room, the board of directors meets. Familiar faces, the mayor, farmer, local merchants, and retired bank executive Judy Bissona.
And we're getting set up with the gift cards today.
Even their own supplier predicted this scheme would only last a few months.
What kind of sales did you have last year?
We had about $1.2 million in sales.
The meat department here is one of our pride and joys. It's an outstanding part of this grocery store.
Look at that T-bone steak. Looks good.
The pride here goes beyond the meat department. Other small communities facing the same dilemma have heard the story of the town that pulled together. Now Rick Mills' phone rings with calls from across the country.
How do you fix this? What did you do? Can you help us? Where do we start?
They're happy to share their tale with anyone who's interested, with a cautionary note. Those hundreds of investors haven't gotten any of their money back yet. All of the store's profits go right back into repairs and new equipment. But the residents here weren't looking to get rich. They invested in something that can't be calculated, something hard to quantify. Maybe hard to understand if you've never lived in a town like Walsh, but the dividend they've gotten is undeniable.
There's kind of a revitalization hope and effort going on in town. Everybody seems to have an uplifted feeling, and the grocery stores really kind of spearheaded that.
Cattle are the #1 agricultural commodity in Colorado, but the Centennial State is also big on beans. And pinto beans, so named because their mottled skins look like the coat on a pinto pony, have earned their stripes as one of the most popular legumes in the United States.
When it comes to our diets, food safety and nutrition have taken on a higher profile than in decades past. And you hear a lot about adding things like omega-3, a beneficial fat found in some varieties of fish. Well, in this Heartland community, fish is the focus. It may not be a location that you associate with a harvest that comes from the water. There are no boats heading for the ocean. In fact, you're not likely to see boats or giant fish nets at all. The Aquaculture Fishery Center at the University of Arkansas is focused instead on helping fish farmers raise better fish at a cost-effective price.
Aquaculture is a major industry in this state. Arkansas, first of all, is the birthplace of warm water aquaculture in the United States. The very first goldfish farms and minnow farms and catfish farms were here in the state. Today, the total farm gate value is about $167 million.
Thanks to a growing consumer demand for farm-raised fish, aquaculture has taken off in many parts of the Heartland. Factor in feed production, processing, and equipment, and the total economic impact for Arkansas's Delta region is more than $1.25 billion.
These eggs are moving right along.
These small catfish eggs will be moved to a fish hatchery building for a few weeks and then returned to the ponds until they reach fingerling size. Then they'll be dispersed for various studies.
We have a project that's looking at additives to the feed that would then add to the fish flesh. Most of the experiments are management-based experiments so that we can look at what a farmer needs to change on his operation to better his bottom line.
A very different research project involves the alligator gar. It's not being raised for eating, but for pest control.
Missouri, for example, has got a problem with exotic fish and rough fish. And they're interested in controlling them with a native top predator. And these guys, which get to be about 7 to 8 feet long, are a native top carnivore in the system.
Researchers also want to improve levels of healthy omega-3 fatty acids in catfish by including things like flaxseed in their diets.
One of the problems right now with that product, though, is that when you add flaxseed oil, it does make the fish taste oilier. The catfish product that people like is a very mild-tasting fish, and they don't really want it to taste oily as a salmon or as a mackerel or something like that.
The center also offers regional fish inspections at its 4 labs across the state. Farmers bring in fish which are then examined by experts. The farmers leave with advice on changes to improve their product and yield.
There's a constant networking that's going on between fish farmers, and sometimes they hear things and say, I've heard that this is fantastic, and is it really? And would you set up an experiment that'll prove or disprove this idea that's going around?
The facility that you have here is unique not only in this country but in the world.
Yes, it certainly is. There are very few places that have made the investment in these kinds of facilities here to do this kind of research.
Mm-hmm. And why is it so important to fish farmers throughout the United States?
They have to have proof before they invest money on their farms, so we have to run the trials here. Laboratory studies and models are fine, but they only go so far.
Researchers also carry out extensive investigations on catfish production far afield from the campus.
The fish raised overseas are raised under very, very different conditions. Quite frankly, they're not held to the same standards as in the United States.
Those issues of quality are critical as U.S. fish farmers compete for consumer dollars on a global scale, meeting the demands of price, but also taste.
So that what comes out on your dinner table is even better than what you might find on the river or in a lake.
Some varieties of fish are excellent sources of omega-3 fatty acids, salmon in particular. But nutritionists point out that omega-3 can also be found in foods other than those with fins. They cite tofu, flax, nuts, canola, and soybean oils as good sources.
I'm Yolanda Vazquez. Still ahead, a Tennessee farm family decides when it comes to horses, big is definitely better.
Hi, I'm Rob Stewart. Still ahead, we'll take you to these beautiful hills of Wyoming to meet a ranch family whose future was headed in a very different path.
Take a guess at how many pounds of cheese the average American eats each year. Now, before you do, remember that includes quesadillas, sandwiches, burgers, dips, spreads, not to mention what you put on a cracker. Actually, mozzarella is the #1 cheese sold in the U.S., a true testament to our love of pizza. But if you go to your grocery shelves, you'll find lots of cheesy choices.
Americans on average eat 31 pounds of cheese a year. Soft cheese, hard cheese, artisanal cheese, stinky cheese. But let's go back to the source. The cheese-making process starts with milk. Sure, you've got your cow's milk, but cheese is also made from sheep and goat's milk. Cheesemakers then introduce rennet, the active enzyme in rennet, causing it to separate into solid curds. That's drained and pressed repeatedly to remove the desired amount of liquid. From there, all kinds of different and complex cheese products are made by introducing molds, bacteria, butterfat, brines, herbs, spices, or wood smoke. The longer the cheese ages, the more flavor it develops. Cheese should be eaten shortly after its purchase, and unless you have a cheese cave handy, just wrap it loosely in wax paper or plastic wrap and tuck it into the warmest and moistest spot in your fridge.
Of course, many cheeses are high in fat. With a name like Double Cream, there's not much mystery as to where it gets its luxurious texture and flavor, but consumed in moderation, cheese is a great way to get calcium for strong bones and strong teeth. That's something you can take off the shelf.
Draft horses were once a mainstay for farm families across the country, plowing the land, bringing in crops. And Clydesdales were some of the most spectacular horses around. Well, at this Tennessee family farm, they are still a sight to
It's been nearly 2 years since Jim and Meredith Voida moved to this picturesque parcel of land from their home state of Washington.
We're in a small valley here. It's very agricultural, corn, soybeans, hay.
And in that time, their Lodestar farm, nestled on 91 acres, has made quite a name for itself. Thanks to a special equine breed, big, beautiful horses known as black Clydesdales. Meredith remembers seeing them for the first time on a trip through Oregon.
They were so beautiful, they were so elegant and so just gorgeous running out in the pasture, and we determined that we wanted to find out more about this breed.
As it turns out, there are fewer than 4,000 of the black Clydesdale breed in the U.S. In the past, these animals were considered by some to be useful, only as working draft horses.
Rhonda, try and push down in your heels some more.
But the Voidas are trying to change the perception of these gentle giants.
We're pretty impressed, and we'd like to get the word out on Clydesdales that this is something besides a plow puller.
Now, do either one of you know why we groom a horse?
At their Northwest Tennessee farm, the large horses are part of a program where youngsters can learn about grooming and learn to ride these large animals just as you would a much smaller breed of horse.
She's doing a nice job controlling Kira, though.
Stand up in your stirrups and put your heels down.
Longtime horse trainer Vicki Aosa says she finds Clydesdales easy to work with.
They're very gentle. They're just your friends. They're not afraid of things. They're not going to spook at anything. They're a good animal to be around, very good-natured.
Vicki's 3 daughters, Melanie, Megan, and little tiny Madison, are all seasoned riders.
I love just being able to come out here and just get on them and play and have a good time.
When the Voidas drew up plans for their horse farm, this is what they envisioned: a place where kids and adults can interact with these gentle giants and develop a greater sense of appreciation for this rare breed.
We like kids, and we want to introduce people to the grandeur of the beast, if you will.
Every Saturday afternoon, the Voidas host an open barn at their farm. It's a chance to diversify their ranching operation, offering services from riding lessons to boarding and training. But a major focus here is also creating a profitable breeding farm, welcoming new horses to the family like Nix, their fun-loving foal. Who is clearly curious about our camera. Nix was born 2 weeks ago to Duchess, a protective mother who's just a bit cautious about the whole situation.
She's checking us out.
As Jim watches the two interact, Meredith keeps a close eye on Kimberly, a pregnant mare back at the barn.
We have a responsibility to these animals. We are the ones who bought them or bred them, and we want to be sure they're healthy.
Step by step and task by task, the couple has worked hard to transform their land into a functional and profitable horse farm.
So there was just a ton of little things that weren't quite right for a horse, and we're just about there.
All of it centered on sharing their love and appreciation of these one-of-a-kind animals.
It's a horse that is gentle, has a sweet disposition, and just wants to please.
Large draft horses like the Clydesdale were essential to farming in the late 18 and early 1900s. It's estimated that in 1920 there were some 26 million draft horses in the United States. That number quickly declined, however, as motorized tractors replaced the traditional source of horsepower.
Hi, I'm Paul Robbins, and here's something you may not have known about agriculture. You like potatoes? Folks in South America first cultivated the spud some 7,000 years ago. I like them baked, I like them mashed, and I love these guys, potato chips. And I'm not alone, chips have become one of the world's best-known snack foods, thanks to a guy named Crumb.
Back in 1853, George Crumb was working as a chef at an elegant resort in Saratoga Springs, New York. French fries were on the menu, but one guest found Crumb's French fries to be too thick. One aside here, by the way, Thomas Jefferson is credited with introducing French fries to America in the 18th century. But back to our story. Crum was irritated by the guest and decided to cut the fries really, really thin. That'll show him. Well, it all backfired. The guests loved the fries, and potato chips were born. But before chips could spread to England and the rest of the U.S., two things happened. The automatic potato peeler was invented in the 1920s, and a Tennessee man named Herman Lay started selling chips. His cross-country travels made Lay's the first successful national brand.
Today, the chips are a big boon to potato farmers whose spuds become these tasty snacks. Flavors, well, you're familiar with barbecue chips and salt and vinegar, but if you travel overseas, you can find your chips in fruit chutney flavor, beef jerky, or soy sauce and butter.
These days, you probably know somebody who's faced with the decision of what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. Well, for one farm family in Wyoming, that decision involved a commitment to the past and the future.
The sounds of these Wyoming mountains are calling a favorite son back home to Hamilton Ranch. And Doug Hamilton is ready to walk through these gates and saddle up for a new chapter in his life.
Hey, Doug. Hey, Dad.
You see, Doug is a bank loan officer working 30 miles away from the ranch, but preserving the future of this family land is demanding a commitment from Doug and his pregnant wife, Michelle, to leave the city behind and make their living on this land.
There's a lot of it that scares me, you know. You work hours and hours will I have the time for my family that I want?
It's a question many farmers and ranchers face today. Who will take over the family land when parents and grandparents age? 4 generations have worked Hamilton Ranch, raising sheep, cattle, and row crops.
When did you start saying, I'm ready to go back?
Well, I think I've always known that I've wanted to. I thought it would possibly be certainly sooner than it has, but it's as you get older, you realize how many challenges there are to coming back and to making it all work.
Doug's grandmother Eleanor knows that overwhelming feeling all too well. More than 40 years ago, Eleanor's brother was killed working on this very land. The question then, as now, what happens next?
Her brother was killed in a tractor accident, and leaving her as the only other blood relative.
There was quite a good deal of talking about selling the place. And of course, Merle and I didn't want to sell it, but we only had pennies, you might say.
It took 12 years of hands-on hard work for Eleanor and Merle to take over and save Hamilton Ranch. The ranch tapped artesian wells to deliver needed water for expanded grazing and crop diversity.
There you go. Come on, buddy.
For Doug, one of the biggest mountains to climb is riding away from a steady paycheck at the bank.
You have to really be able to manage money and expenses to make ends meet. It's easy to live paycheck to paycheck. It's not easy to live paycheck to paycheck when it comes once a year.
You wonder sometimes if that's a smart move for a young couple nowadays. They both have good jobs and they can make a living, better living than this.
But a strong family foundation is deeper than finances and a fear of failure.
There's a lot of benefits to living in an ag family. You just spend a lot of quality time together and be with each other every day, and it's a lot of hard work, but you get to do it together.
So Doug has decided to follow in the pioneering footsteps of his grandmother and his father Keith.
Families that don't have generations that want to come back, they look at the rugged lifestyle that we have to endure, and they opt to not have to do that anymore. And so for me to have somebody that wants to go ahead and take that chance that they can take the time that it's going to take to make one of these operations run, I'm just tickled to death.
I've known since the time I was really little, kindergartner, that this is what I lived and breathed. It's what my ties are to. They always say you should do what you love and do what you do best, and I'd say it would be this.
And that's going to do it for us this time. Thank you for traveling the country with us on this edition of America's Heartland.
And remember, there's much more on America's Heartland on our website, including video from the stories on today's show. Just log on to americasheartland.org. We'll see you next time.
To order a copy of this broadcast, visit us online or call 1-888-814-3923. The cost is $14.95 plus shipping.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand in America's heartland, living close to the land.
America's Heartland is made possible by
They make up a small part of our population, but have a huge impact on our lives. They take business risks few others would tolerate, all on our behalf. They're American farmers who feed, fuel, and clothe the world. Monsanto would like to recognize them for all they do for the rest of us. Because ultimately, our success and everyone else's depends on theirs.
And by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of agriculture.